Told you it was a fiery speaker. Well, I wouldn't want to follow Jim Rubens, but if there's anyone that can, it's the next speaker. He's been called the godfather of the movement to get money out of politics. He's the author of Republic Lost. He's founded more organizations than I care to list, but a few of them I will. New Hampshire Rebellion. Larry walked. You think it's cold right now? Picture this weather from the time you get up till the time the sun goes down every single day, walking for 20 miles a day for 3 straight weeks. He did that in the name of campaign finance reform. I don't know if any single person has done more to bring awareness and fights harder for this issue than our next speaker. So, I'm truly honored. I think we all owe you a little bit of debt, Larry, for how much you've actually given to this movement. So, I'm truly honored to introduce to you Lawrence Lessig.
So it is so great to know we're just about finished and we can go inside. Penguins are smart enough to know that you should be together, bunched up in the cold. Maybe you guys should just get together a little bit here. So there's been a lot of trash talk about an institution that I've spent a lot of time studying, the United States Supreme Court. And I want to start by saying I think you guys are a little bit ungrateful. Ungrateful. No, I'm serious. Just think about when I started in this movement 14 years ago, when my friend Aaron Swartz told me I had to stop my work on the internet, take up this fight for corruption. I started working in the money and politics field. And when I did that, it was a field filled by a bunch of democracy nerds, basically guys, not all. Granny D was a very famous fighter for campaign finance reform, but it was a tiny movement. And then just over on the next field, there was a movement for gerrymandering reform. It too was filled with a bunch of white guys, tiny, tiny movement. And then there was on the other field, a field for voting rights and the support for voting rights. And that was the incredibly romantic movement that had been leading the fight for civil rights for 400 years in America. But in that field, there was still a Voting Rights Act. And that act was being enforced by lawyers in courts to give people an equal right to vote. Then 10 years ago, the institution of the Supreme Court decided Citizens United. And that decision finally woke America up to the extraordinary corruption that had spread through our democracy. That decision gave us the movement that we now see that is building to make reform possible. But so I think we should not be ungrateful to that institution. We should say to that institution, thank you for finally bringing together these different movements into the common movement for democracy that we see right now. 4 years ago, the least successful campaign for president, that was mine, the least successful campaign for president said, our objective should be to fix democracy first. We should bring together public funding, gerrymandering reform, the reform of the voting rights system, and we should make that our single promise on day one. Nobody even saw how this should be an issue. But today, every single one of the Democratic candidates still standing, except for one, he's the leading candidate, but every other one of these Democratic candidates has committed to fundamental reform of our democratic system within the first 100 days of the next administration. We have a real chance for real reform because that institution has united us in the idea that democracy must be fixed, and it must be fixed first. Now, because we are one movement, then, we can call upon the resources and the traditions of each part, each corner of this movement, and on this day, in honor of the greatest civil rights activist in the history of America, we should look back to a speech that he gave 23,000 days ago, when he said, in a speech about the right to the ballot, he said, quote, "So long as I do not firmly and irrevocably possess the right to vote, I do not possess myself. I cannot make up my mind, it is made up for me. I cannot live as a democratic citizen, observing the laws I have helped to enact. I can only submit to the edict of others." Now, it is astonishing that 55 years after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, there are still people who are fighting for the right to vote. It is astonishing. But what we should recognize that these last 10 years have taught us is that even with the right to vote, even if we have an irrevocable right to vote, we still cannot possess ourselves. Even with the right to vote, we cannot make up for ourselves our own mind. It is made up for us. Even with the right to vote, we are not equal democratic citizens observing laws that we have helped to enact, because this is an unequal democratic system where a small group, a tiny group of people get to make the laws or to stop the laws that we need made, because this unequal democracy is now broken. We have learned that fact because of that institution. So I say, on the night before the anniversary of that extraordinary decision of Citizens United, we should say thank you to that court and take up the task of repairing the democracy that their decisions have worked so hard to destroy. I say on the 10th anniversary of this decision, we should thank that court and take up the pen and rewrite the Constitution that they have done such a terrible job in misreading. And I say, most importantly, on the 10th anniversary of this extraordinary decision, we should reclaim as citizens the ownership of this Constitution and take it back from an occupied field filled with a cabal of lawyers who think that they know how best to make constitutional law happen, and instead for us to make this the work that we do as citizens first. It is an extraordinary fact, but in the world today, 150 people, mostly men, mostly Americans, but 150 people have as much wealth as half of the world combined. That extraordinary inequality will lead to one reality. 10 years from now, we will either gather here and reflect on the extraordinary success that I think we will have in restoring and building a democracy that actually represents citizens, all citizens, for the first time in American history. Or there will not be a place to assemble to celebrate anything of a democracy. Because a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal cannot survive if 250 years after its creation, still all people are not equal. We must wage the fight for an equal democracy where all citizens are equal. And this movement led by so many groups that are represented here, I believe in my heart of hearts, for the first time in my life, I am sure we will win that movement. And then when we do, we will celebrate so gloriously that we have achieved the dreams that so many have fought for, especially the man whose name we honor today with this extraordinary event. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for the fight you are doing for a democracy that will work.